what do you think needs to be put in place to keep good staff and support them?
I think we have some really good opportunities. So fortunately, there's lots of people who want to work in prison. There are lots of people who want to be in those environments and try and make change. And I think you see that a lot in forensic psychology and counselling teams. And it sort of baffles me that we don't have on-site psychology and counselling teams for staff. I think we absolutely should.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I really think that's key because, like we said, it's a very specific type of place and you need targeted specialist support. So rather than go to a counselling session and spend the first 20 minutes explaining what association is and what all the different acronyms mean and things, you're with someone who knows this place and knows it well. So I think that's a massive opportunity. And I also think it would be cost effective because the amount, I mean, look at that sick leave stat.
774 years.
Exactly. So that, I think the peer support teams in prison are a great idea, but I think they're not necessarily facilitated the right way. I mean, I went to Texas and I did a bit of work out there in their prison system and they've got their version of a peer support program, but the staff vote those officers in. So they elect them to be in that role rather than in our system where we can nominate ourselves for that job, which for most people is really well-intentioned. But for a lot of people, that might not be the person they feel comfortable speaking to. So it's a really basic change, but just to kind of elect people in themselves.
That makes sense though.
Yeah, I think it really does make sense. So I think that's a key part. I'm not sure exactly how you do it because we're in a really challenging situation right now with staff.
What would have made the difference for you then, personally?
Toilet, Zach.
That's all it took.
Be a toilet talk.
Just get me a flush and I would be there.
Because you did say that you were burnt out towards the end. What would have prevented that?
Do you know, sadly, I don't think anything would have done. Do you know, and like...
What about if you stayed at Whitemoor?
If I stayed at Whitemoor...
See, you're smiling now.
What a place. You're like, I remember an officer saying to me...
all this trauma is gone.
I remember an officer saying to me when I was about to go and I'd got my SOs and I was like, oh, I'm moving to London. That was what I was and he was like, what are you doing? He's like, what are you doing? You can't go. And I went, I was like, you know, you see Sea Wing and it's massive and it's enormous. And I remember being like, put some proper shoes on. He was like, no. I was like, oh, this is different. You know, I was like, but Whitemoor is different now. Whitemoor is not the same place that I worked at back then. If it had been, you know, I'd probably stayed on that wing forever. The staff were amazing, you know, and there's a few things that tie into that. So Whitemoor's really small. It only houses 400 men and the wings are small, only 120. And then they're sub-split into spurs. So then you've only got 40 people on a spur. And this sounds stupid, but it's much more of like a community feeling because 100%. It's small. There's mini kitchens. Everyone calls each other by their first name. When I was there, the staff turnover was really low. So we all knew each other. Because it's such a tiny jail comparatively, now we talk about supermaxes and things, don't we? All the prisoners pretty much knew each other.
Yeah.
So just the atmosphere was completely different. So I just think some of the changes that have been made have been catastrophic in terms of people.
Like destabilizing that kind of environment.
Mean, obviously it was really challenging at times and I saw some difficult things there, but generally, you know, at least in some ways, the prison system really got it right then. But now, so much of those little changes have been made and I think it's had a really damaging effect.
Yeah. And what is the effect on that relationship? So like what are positive relationships between officers and prisoners realistically achievable?
I think so. Yeah, I definitely think so. I don't know when you get bored of me talking about Whitemoor, but...
That's the gold standard.
Yeah, for me. But back then it was really... what's the word? It was really kind of, I guess, promoted by senior management. That was their main focus, was staff and prisoner relationships. And it was emphasized in loads of ways. So you had the personal officer scheme existed then, which was huge. And you had to complete weekly reports on the guys.
I remember that.
You were kind of, but you couldn't just say, I saw him and he looked fine. You had to have actually had a conversation and to have written that conversation down. And that meant that people actually went and they talked to each other. So there were ways of kind of bringing it in, but also there was just a real cultural acceptance in Whitemoor that it is safest for everyone if we know each other. There's no negatives to that. We all lose if we kind of It's a them and us sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I look back on that, and there were some really challenging people there, you know, natural lifers, but we had such a good rapport with each other. And that doesn't mean that you're, you know, best friends getting on all the time, obviously. But if you have a good rapport with people, that means you can then challenge them in ways that you can't if there's no sort of relationship to begin with.
Facts.
And you also, I think, I found this a lot since the book's come out in some areas of the media. There's been a real kind of anger at the idea of relationships between staff and prisoners that are positive. Because I think people feel that you need to be holding people accountable for their crimes, and that only comes
by what? Treating them
right. But that my point is that if you have a decent relationship with someone, you can do that in a way, that you can't do if you have no relationship at all. If you do have a positive relationship with someone, you can call them out on things that you can't otherwise.
I mean, this is something that we discuss a lot, but, you know, going back to what we were talking about earlier, you know, the conditions and stuff like that, not only for staff, but for the prisoners, you know, like, do you think that if the conditions for the prisoners were better and everything for them was better, that they would rehabilitate better and, you know,
more effectively
and in the end be better for everybody out here because less crime?
Yeah. It's a no-brainer to me. I struggle to see how people can't see that.
The fact that people are annoyed about relationship building goes back to the fact that these people are human people, and if you're not treating them as a human, they are not going to be, it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
So I struggle to understand why people can't see that.
I'm with you. But that's just perception. You've been and worked in there, so you've got a different view to someone that's like, no, tough on crime, block them up. But
that's not perception as such. It is.
That is
science.
Okay.
Well, this is it. If you could,
it is perception. It is perception, but it's science.
The facts behind it. You're saying, yeah, okay.
Yeah, if you could come to me and say, here is however many peer-reviewed scientific that show if you lock people up in a room for endless hours with rats for company that they come out feeling really good about themselves, then fine. But you can't show me that study.
Don't exist.
It doesn't exist. Like, and I struggle with that as well, because I think we know it. We know the things we just said. And I think most people do, because even if, you know, science and anecdotes from people who've been in there mean nothing, take someone who's never had any experience of prison. We all know what it's like to feel frightened or to feel humiliated, or when someone makes you feel small, belittles you. We know what that feels like. And afterwards you don't think, I'm going to go and just do something good, you know? Do you know? And it's just basic social skills. Like, we know that. But I think it almost comes from fear. Obviously, I can't speak for people who feel that way, but I think when we're scared of something, we feel a need to kind of stamp it out, to just control it in whatever way we can. Mm-hmm. And crime is obviously reported in such a specific way in the media that makes people out to be different from a whole story. I phrase that terribly, considering I'm meant to be a writer, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to say that better, but the media portrayal of people is so specific. So if that's your source of information on what prisoners and prisons are like, and that's frightening. That's scary.
It's very much skewed. That's
the word. It's very much skewed. But then you react to that, don't you? Think, well, I need to control that. And control is, I will lock them in a room.
What do you think? Let's say the three most important, because I mean, I'm sure there's more. But what do you think the three most important things are that need to be done to help improve the prison system?
Well, I'm biased, obviously, but I think you need to start with staff welfare.
Okay.
Because there's lots of talk at the minute in politics about building new prison spaces. And I appreciate the need for that. But that's null and void if you've got no staff to work there. And we've seen that in some big contemporary jails, which have had entire wings shut down in the middle of an overcrowding crisis because there's no staff. And also, I think you have some amazing third sector organisations and charities and sports groups that want to come in.
Yeah.
But if you haven't got the staff to unlock the doors and escort the people there and supervise them, then again, it's null and void. So you need to get staff, and you need to make staff want to stay. So for me, that's the biggest thing, though I appreciate that I'm biased. Secondly, conditions, like really basic ways of treating people decently. So cells should be decently ventilated. I mean, you know how hot it gets in those places.
With a vent.
It
doesn't work.
With no...
You're just at the vent hoping for some breeze.
Or those little, you know, those little shutter things, and then all you got is dust.
What is that?
I tried to do it one time. It was so embarrassing.
You can't even clean it.
No one saw me because I was on my own. But I remember opening this little vent and I was thinking, oh my God, there's a bit of like air. And I went right to it and took like this massive breath. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed right now. No one can see me, but I'm internally embarrassed because I just have a ton of dust.
And now the world knows.
Down my throat. Yes, because it needs to change.
When I was at Belmarsh, we had 3-man bang up.
Oh, mate, allow it.
And in those summers, I'd open the door and it's like just a wall of heat. And I just think, you know.
Like that is inhumane.
I agree.
Locker room kind of.
So cells should be well ventilated.
Cool.
But general conditions as well. So toilets, but
rats.
All
Toilet
of it.
talk.
Yeah, there shouldn't really be rats there if you could avoid it. You know, like honestly, I had never seen a cockroach in this country until I worked at Scrubs and opened the cleaning cupboard on Sea Wing Landing 3.
That's
And
crazy.
They scattered when I switched the light on.
Yeah, it sounds like Pentonville. Rats and roaches. Yeah. And then pigeons fighting rats on the exercise yard.
And people would have like
bets.
I was gonna say like tournaments.
Yeah.
Yeah, more entertaining than you think.
I'm telling you. Like there were champion pigeons that were just ruthless.
There were pigeons who would take any rat on.
Yeah.
Well, the rats were ruthless as well. They didn't have.
They ate each other.
They had no fear. Yeah, that's crazy. Okay.
And
what
number
else?
3.
Just trying to think of anything Whitemoor related. I'd bring back in the personal officer scheme.
Okay.
I think that's really important. But even on a basic level of so many times at Scrubs and Belmarsh, people would come out their cells and not know who to go to.
Yeah.
For all manner of different things. If you have one single.
But what about this? You know, do you think they should be matched up appropriately, or do you think it should just be that's your PO and you get on with them?
It used to be
That's
like
a good
whatever
question.
cell you're in, innit?
Yeah, it
so
used
like
to
an
be,
officer
yeah.
used to cover a certain amount of cells.
I remember I didn't have I don't remember a personal officer until I got to open.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I just remember certain people having these personal officers that, you know, it just wasn't really working out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you've got one individual that you're supposed to, let's say, go to.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not even going to compare it to probation, but I'm just saying like that's kind of like the person.
Your go-to,
which it's a weird dynamic because in prison, you're kind of like, you don't really have anybody that you can go to, let's say, especially officer-wise.
Yeah.
You got the odd people, but if you are not matched up properly and you don't really like them or you're not really vibes-ing with them, like you're not really
That's
in that,
a really good point.
You're not really in that space to be like, right, I really need to get on with this person because you're just like, no, I haven't got time for it. So how do you feel like that? How do you think that would work?
Yeah, that's a good point and shows that I'm obviously like thinking of it from my perspective.
Whether that it would just get on with
For me, I saw that it worked really well, but maybe the guys who were my personal prisoners might have been like, oh, I don't know. It's a difficult one, I think.
But it's interesting that you saw on your side that personal officers worked for people. And
I thought it was really positive. It just encouraged some kind of positive interaction.
100%. I remember I used to do them, I don't know if it was once a week or once a month. How often was the...
Once a week, the reports
once a week, yeah. So I remember they used to unlock you and chat to you. You know what I'm saying? What year did you go away?
2017.
Okay, so it changed then.
Yeah, it would have gone by then.
Because in 2000, when I first got in, between 09 and 12,
that was
regular. In every prison you go to, I'm your personal officer.
I did have one in 2019 at Open.
At Open, so maybe they kept it there. Probably.
Yeah, interesting, because I didn't remember having a personal officer in prison.
See, yeah, and that was good because they just talk to you. And that makes a big difference. Remember, we always say that it's the human element, that human connection, that genuine treatment, like seeing you as a human being, whether that's looking at a member of staff without the uniform, seeing the human being, and looking at a person that's serving time as a human being, not just a criminal or whatever, makes a big difference.
Definitely.
So like at the times there was officers that would come on the wing and were like, yes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And then they'd be like, you're right, lads, listen, give me an easy time, no drama. You know what I mean? And the wing went smooth.
Yeah.
But when there's an officer that's like, really, that communication's not there, that interaction's not there, that relationship isn't there, it's just a weird feeling on the wing and it makes it worse.
What else did you find when you were inside? Saying you're inside.
No, but you did do time.
Yeah. what else do you feel like wasn't working or
Could have been done better.
could have been done better?
So again, at Whitemoor, the activities they had were really good.
Okay.
Like they had state-of-the-art recording studios. They had music production software.
Yeah, wicked.
Yeah, and they had access to open university courses, higher education.
Like stimulation, right?
Yeah, but that one point is interesting stimulation.
Yeah.
So then I went to other prisons and it's the same amount of time you spend in this activity, so almost 2 hours, but it was packing tea bags into little plastic bags.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Yeah, I have as well.
Haven't
Not
done
for like,
strawberries. I did strawberry
no.
boxing up strawberries, headphones for Virgin Atlantic.
Just like a conveyor belt of
Literally, you used to get paid a penny for every headphone you'd
Yeah,
coil up.
yeah. I remember that, but I
Yeah.
didn't do that. I did do the tea bag bit for a bit.
Tea bags.
And I'm just traumatized from they're not even real tea bags.
they are not.
They are fake. And you're packing them up.
Mate.
There's one thing that comes out of this podcast, it should be that they're not real.
They're not real.
They're not even real tea bags.
You need 4 of them for a tea to taste
It's
okay.
actually crazy,
Minimum.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's mad. But yeah,
That's, I mean, as we go back to, you know, treating people as human beings and stimulation, like it's a person, then obviously
Yeah.
not going to do well in those environments.
Obviously.
And that kind of stuff.
but
And also-
the higher education is a big element.
Yeah,
If
we've
you-
always said higher education. I had to really, really fight to find a level 3.
Did you?
Yeah, I
well
did
done.
it.
Yeah, well done.
But that was not really doable.
Yeah. It should, there's so many changes you can make to that, which I think are quite basic, that would make a massive difference.
Yeah, like you're talking about basic stuff as well.
I think so. And it's also, as an officer, having sat and watched that workshop for 2 hours, like part of you just like dies inside just watching that over and over again. And I'm not saying I left the job for that reason, but when we're talking on the subject of you want staff to stay and gain that
Yeah.
experience
I
and
was
want
going
to
to say,
develop
yeah,
these
how did that
relationships.
make you feel?
Right. I mean, obviously, I'm not trying to make out that I had a worse time at the Tea Workshop than other people, but there's a point to it, I think. If you're in a really engaging, interesting workshop, you feel different as an officer. You feel like this is an interesting place to be and I want to speak to these people about the music they're making or the course that they're studying. I want to know what's going on here. And it just makes you feel like,
You're making a difference.
absolutely, like the work you're doing is important, it's
Yeah.
fulfilling and it's
Yeah.
interesting. If you're just literally watching people go, I mean, it's
That
soul
must-
destroying.
That must be, yeah, for you guys as
That
well.
is the longest hour.
Oh no, I just remembered one other workshop that I was part of, which was packing clothes.
We've taken Zach to a dark place,
Mate.
Alex.
No,
He's
mate.
just sitting.
They just keep continually dumping these clothes, and you had to separate what was good and not good. And then,
Do you know what? I feel like I've blocked a lot of those.
Do you
like,
think? That's
yeah, out.
interesting.
Yeah,
because
you're triggering these memories now.
Because things that you're saying, like things are coming back. Like especially when I was in the gardens and stuff like that. Certain things, some of that was quite good. Oh yeah, wait, in the gardens, picking up everyone's like
Little.
clothes that they've thrown out. But I'm not going to say like literally their underwear, like everywhere, and you would be picking up their underwear. Which just underneath this underwear, I just couldn't believe what was coming out of it.
Mad.
Like, I'm actually quite shocked. This is traumatizing.
Yeah.
Definitely blocked stuff out.
Yeah,
So
I'm not surprised.
I understand why staff watching that as well must think they're not doing a good job.
Yeah.
Because they're allowing
Yeah.
this to just happen in front of their eyes.
You're just complicit in it.
You're just there.
And no one joins the job thinking, I can't wait to watch that or I can't
Watch
wait to lock
Teabag
doors.
Packers, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Welcome back to Teabag Talk.
I mean, okay. Well, on to more positive stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Tell us what you're doing. You wrote a book.
Yes.
Yeah. What inspired you to write this book? Behind These Doors.
behind these doors.
Yes.
So
Very good book, by the way.
thank you very much. Thank you. It still feels really surreal that people like are actually reading it. You know, it's like an actual book and not just on my laptop.
Yeah, I know people that are reading it and have read it
Oh, really?
and said that it's really good. Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So I've just like a massive loser and like I always have been. So in school, that's all I used to do was like all stories and reading and writing. And I never lost that. I just love it. And I always wanted to be a writer, but I thought it seemed very unrealistic. And then after my time in prison, obviously any 10 years in prison you're going to have stories, but I thought it was a particularly interesting time in that
The time period.
the specific time period. Yeah. So it was like pre-Me Too. Like I said earlier, I don't think that officer would get away with that comment now about women not working in jails. So culturally, it was an interesting time. The sentences that were being handed out during that time changed. We went from maybe 16 to 20, maybe 25 years for murder. I saw people getting 42 years. So it really increased. And also politically. So in that time, I saw the ban on books.
Yeah.
The ban on books. Obviously IPP, which as an officer, you just feel pointless because what can you say? What can you do to somebody? And I remember just thinking, I don't know what to say in this conversation. There's nothing I can do here at all. So things like that. And then obviously for me, massively, the cuts to staffing, funding, and the lack of welfare. And I just thought, people don't know the reality of what this is like. And we deserve to keep these stories out there. Do you know what I mean? It's an interesting snapshot in time. I don't think it should be forgotten. I think all these different voices need to be heard because it's real life. And sometimes I think with prison, we want just the best stories and all the good, but we need to kind of counter that with some of the uncomfortable stuff because that's the thing that produces change. So I just wanted to write something that was really honest. I don't think there's a lot about female officers out there, particularly at the minute. You know, female officers are getting a really bad rap. Yeah. And I want to have stuff out there that shows the skills you have and the potential you can bring to that job and what a huge privilege that job can be if you get it right. And also just for me, it was all of my 20s, which are like formative years, aren't they? And I didn't want to have done all that and then it just means nothing.
Wow. So what kind of change do you want?
I think I would like people to view the people in prison and the people who work there differently to the way they do. I think sometimes prison officers are kind of misconstrued as idiots or thugs or people who just like using keys. And I have met, the kindest and the bravest and the most decent people in there. I really have. And I think I want to celebrate that side of it. And I also want people to see a different side to prison. I think sometimes the media tells us that everyone in there is the worst of the worst and organised crime. And it's just not the truth at all. You have some really tragic situations in there and people who are in the absolute worst place they could be in terms of actually coming out a different person. But there's so much noise on this subject. So many different people talk. And the voices that never really get heard, obviously with the exception of podcasts like this and things, is the people who've actually been in there. Yeah. That's really frustrating. So I'd like to hear more of that. I agree.
Yeah, what you said it's really inspiring because it's, all the stuff that we want to get out there. And to have your voice saying it as well, and from a different perspective as well. It means a lot. So thank you. And hopefully, change will happen,
I hope so. I feel like if there's ever a time that it's going to happen, I feel like it could be now.
It should be. Yeah. I mean, it should have been ages ago.
Yes, I mean, it should have been, yeah.
I saw that you written an article for The Guardian. Was it The Guardian? Recently. Are you looking to do more of that?
Yeah, so I've written for The Guardian a bit and places like I've written for The Big Issue.
Okay.
And London Economic and stuff. So I think that's important to do because they've got such big audiences and I like people to know the truth. So yeah, I do a bit of writing here and there. Obviously, I'm focusing on the first book and looking to maybe write a second. Okay. But writing is my thing now.
How, in terms of the book, how did you get around, not talking about people specifically or divulging, the secrecy act that officers have to agree to or sign?
So when it comes to people, everyone in there has been given a different name.
Okay.
But I've also amalgamated all the characters. So one character is actually 2 or 3 people. Okay. And I've moved things around. So incidents happened in different jails at different times. With officers, it's different genders, that kind of thing. And I think the truth with that is that any one of those incidents or situations that you read about, that could be happening right now in a different prison. And an officer who I've never met or a prisoner I've never met will have a version of that story to tell themselves because it's so common. And yeah, just made sure that I'm not disclosing anything that isn't in the public eye. And that's interesting about prisons because so much is out there in terms of all the fatal incident reports. They're all accessible online. The inspection reports, they're all accessible online.
You've got documentaries made from prisoners' phones.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's out there. This stuff is out there. I guess it was just trying to consolidate it all in a way that felt sensitive and compassionate, but it's also, it's my story as well. I'm telling the truth of that.
Love that.
And I just wanted to ask you, for anybody that's listening now that might benefit from your answer. But what would your advice be to somebody that's going into the prison officer role now be?
So I'm going to take the advice that was told to me by my body officer, who is, you know, just the best man. And there was not, obviously this is at Whitemoor, but he honestly,
you're killing me.
like, I'm not making this up. No one ever raised their voice at this man, ever.
Okay.
And he wasn't massive and he wasn't, you know, but anything he asked somebody to do, they would do. There was so much respect for him. He really knew this job inside out. I couldn't have been put with anyone better. And he said to me very early on, treat people how you want to be treated, because when the pool balls all start flying, they always fly in one direction.
Yeah.
That's like just giving me tingles saying it. Isn't that true though? Like when it all hits the fan, it's a specific type of person who gets the brunt of it.
Yeah.
And I have never forgotten that. When all the pool balls start flying, they always fly in one direction.
He should write a book too, man.
Oh.
You know what
What a book that would be.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
That's the quote,
you.
man. That's the quote. That's the cover.
Yeah.
It? I can see that. But
Yeah, that's
thank you
good.
for that.
I think people benefit from it, so thank you.
Yeah.
I hope so.
As ever on Life After Prison, we like to highlight organisations that can support people inside or on their journey of life after prison. And reading your book, we came across a couple, well, a few of them, and I'm going to mention a couple. There's Trailblazers.
Yeah.
And the National Association of Official Prison Visitors.
Yeah.
But are there any more that you'd like to highlight or shout out?
Sure. So Belong, they do a version of mentoring and relationship building in ISIS and Feltham, I believe, quite similar to what Trailblazers do. And that's the main one that comes to mind I can think of.
Okay. And we'll make sure that these organisations mentioned are in the show notes. But as ever, you can get in touch with us if you have any comments or anything to add on the discussion we've had, or you just want to, you know, drop us a message. Please do that by DMing us on Insta and X at After Prison Pod. And on TikTok, it's at Life After Prison. You can also send us an email to podcast@prison.radio. And if you're listening on the inside, you can get in touch with us via NPR.
So a massive thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much
for joining us. You've been great.
Yeah, really good conversation.
Yeah.
A lot of toilet talk.
All me.
That's all good. It's all good.
And a massive thank you to you guys for listening. We will see you next time.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Take care.